So you're in this scenario. Someone says to you, Quran, how can you say the Quran is right? Because the Quran contradicts science. You know, I went to this Muslim school, this is what the children said. So throw out to me some answers then. Yes. Don't you raise your hand, by the way, just.
Okay. I mean, let's not discuss whether he misworded them or misrepresented their answer. But I think this is an issue of first principles. He has first principles in saying that science is absolute truth. And our first principle says that there is a God, there is an eternal being who created the heavens and the earth, and he gave us instructions that are absolutely true. What I would do, if I got this question right now, I would explain to him why science is not absolute truth and not the only truth. I would explain to him why it's fallible, why it can fail us, and why it's prone to change. And why we would say that I stick to my first principles in believing that there is a creator, and the instructions he gave us, these are the only absolute truth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You're along the right lines. I like the way that you're going down the route of undermining his world, his belief in it.
Okay.
However, and I want someone to add to Ibrahim's answer, I just want to add a little thing. It's kind of like, I'm like, have you stopped beating your wife yet? Right? Have you stopped beating your wife yet? Have you stopped beating your wife yet?
Doesn't make sense.
Okay. So what's happened is, I'm asking you a question, no matter which way you answer it. So if I say to you, have you stopped beating your wife? What happens if you answer yes? It means you're beating her in the past.
Acknowledging that.
Yeah. What if you say no?
You're baiting me.
Yeah.
Like Kathy knew.
Yeah. So what if you say no? It means you're still beating her up.
Yeah. Of course.
You punched her on the way in. Yeah. So the problem is, no matter which way you answer my question, you're trapped. You're between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
Because I have built up a false dichotomy. I've built up a false thing, a false assumption, and I'm attacking you. Have you stopped beating your wife yet? Your first thing is not to answer my question, but say, your question is invalid. You're assuming a false thing, which is I was beating my wife. Okay? What he's doing here is, before you answer him, you want to challenge the false dichotomy he's making up. And the false dichotomy he's making up is Quran, religion, idiots, versus science, rationality. No matter which way you answer it, it's going to sound like he's saying, yeah, it's religion versus science, and you're like, I accept his religion versus science, and here's my answer. There's a better way of answering it. Attack his question. Attack his thing. So that's a little prod for whoever wants to go next.
I have a thing which
Sure.
more in the understanding of why he's pointing out this. I mean, it is of course indeed religion, science, but it's also from the first principles what Ibrahim said. I mean, he's thinking of Quran is also, I mean, it's not scientific. There are no observations. There's not even a relation between how science is done today and the Quran. So he doesn't want, or he's not willing to make. He's not able to make a relation between science and Quran. There is no relation between science and Quran from his point of view.
Yes.
So understand, I mean, that's how I would understand his question, why
Sure.
he's posing this question.
Sure.
And correct, I mean, there is also some emotional going on. Religious people and scientific people, I mean, these are going against each other. I would, in this learning process, before I would have said, I mean, these are not contradictions, there's no contradiction. The way, the best way maybe to attack the question is, I would show that these, I mean, there's no contradiction between both. I mean, as what you said before, you can have science, but it doesn't say that something is right or wrong. It is an observation. You make a theory.
Yep.
Things can change. That's one thing. And let's keep the Quran and the religious aspect and the moral aspect outside of this. It doesn't say that religious people are non-scientific.
Yeah, you're along the right lines, and I get a sense for what you're trying to say. You're trying to find a way of actually putting it in terms of words, what you would say to him. An additional prod is this. It's basically like me making an accusation against you. The first thing you need to do is not accept the accusation. So you're along the right lines that he's first saying Quran, religion, religion, science, they contradict each other. Let's have a discussion. So the first thing you want to do is you want to detach the two. How do you do that? I'm leaving that up to you guys.
Maybe I totally agree to not answering the question by one sentence, rather than explaining our narrative, how we see this weapon. But I want to add a very specific point. Maybe it's not the most clever part to give an answer or any kind of response to the person who asks, but rather to an audience. So if I would receive this question, and there is any kind of audience and people listens to me, I would rather, take this dialogue as a method to convey my message to the other people.
Yes.
Because, Suboor, the chance that Mr. Dawkins, follows our narrative, even if we gave him 1 million examples, the chance is low. But the 1,000 people or 10,000 people see us in the debate. Maybe we get the heart and the touch and on the
Sure.
streets, that's the same. So my, approach to take this as a show to convey the messages.
Excellent. So I agree with you totally. But then what do we say? I agree totally. Because it's actually a lot of debates are like this. The aim is not for the actual debater. He already knows. It's like I found out a few years ago, there was a woman from Pakistan who has a PhD in Islam, basically, and she claims that hijab is not fard. The problem is she doesn't want to accept that. It's not got to do with, let me give her daleel. She knows the daleel. Nothing to do with that. You're right. How do you untangle that though? And I'm not saying your answer is wrong. I'm not saying your answer is wrong. They're actually very good compared to what people would normally say, which is start defending the Quran, right? But how would you actually take his false dichotomy, science versus religion, break that in an instant? Like, what would they do in Kung Fu movies? The guys come with a knife, one move, khalas.
Couldn't you kind of say that he came with the assumption that
Yes.
there is a contradiction between the Quran and science?
Yes, although I'm going to tweak what you said.
Okay.
You came with an assumption that science leads to certainty. And then what you do is you don't say my religion versus your science. You say philosophy of science, the academic understanding versus your popular nonsense. So he's building up a fight between Islam and science. You take him down and you build up a fight between his false popular narratives and mainstream academia. You do that, and what automatically happens is he starts attacking the academics. And I've done this, alhamdulillah, by the permission of Allah, in debates. Even in the debate which I had with Aaron Ra, he started attacking the philosophers. Before he wanted to make science versus religion, science versus religion, science versus religion, I kept saying, this is what philosophers say, this is what philosophers say. He started to actually attack the Cambridge University philosopher and saying, oh, he would say that because he believes in God. I said, no, he's an atheist. So even if he believed in God, since he's a Cambridge publisher, right? I mean, he's published with Cambridge, he's a philosopher of biology. It doesn't matter even if he was a believer in God. But what happened was, Aaron Ra was trying to build up the fight between religion and science. I made the fight between the popular narrative of people like him and Richard Dawkins and mainstream academics. And what does he start doing? He starts attacking them. What happens then is the audience sees the real battle is between the popular understanding and the academic understanding. It's not between religion and science. Right? And that is very powerful. So you basically say, your seeming science leads to truth, and your popular understanding is out of line with the academic understanding. One more thing I would add. We wouldn't say this is what's wrong with science, or this is why it's... We would say, which is the correct answer, it is the beauty of science that it changes. It is the beauty of science that it changes. Because if science didn't change, we would still be believing in old ancient theories, we wouldn't be making progress. The very reason why science progresses is because its conclusions change. That's the beauty of science. It's not a limitation of science. And always, and I do this in my discussions, and we all should be doing this, always go back to, especially if you're dealing with somebody who's got this sort of Western superiority complex, right? Say, yeah, that's great, you know, you guys, you're doing quite well in science, you know, and stuff like this, but remember, you did get it from the Muslim world. Whatever you're achieving now, it's all because of the Muslims. You do realize that, don't you? And you do realize that he was a Quranic scholar, and he said what inspired him to do science was God, and the foundation of the scientific worldview that he came up with is directly linked to the Quran as well. Because all it's about is, it's not about getting into these things, have you stopped being your wife yet, and getting into discussions. It's about breaking assumptions. Going to the very foundations. This is actually the Taymiyyan approach. You just go straight to the root. What is this thing based upon? And then you challenge it from there. You're saying something, Nadeem?
Because we're doing it live, there's some questions from online.
Yes.
Two questions. First question, will science ever disprove the Quran or Islam?
Okay, again, somebody comes with a question like that. Jazakallah khair, Nadeem. Somebody comes with a question like that. Now there's a automatic dichotomy between science, Quran. Based upon what we learned so far, how would you address it? Someone who hasn't answered so far. Someone who hasn't answered. I think you... No, you didn't answer, yes.
It's basically the same thing as what Dawkins was doing. Is using science as a yardstick for the truth, believing that it will change its nature, and it will come one time which definitely will lead you a truth, and it will stop changing basically, which cannot happen because it will keep on changing.
Okay.
About observations and whatever.
Excellent. Yes.
Suboor, I'd like to add to this question, subhanAllah. I notice it's a social problem within the Muslim community, subhanAllah. A lot of Muslims have the hidden belief, the hidden first principle, if I have to say it that way, that truth has to be validated and verified through science.
Yes.
They even, subhanAllah, even Quran, they verify it through science, validate it through science.
Yes.
And a lot of Muslims, subhanAllah, you mentioned the example of your daughter, right?
Yes.
SubhanAllah, from since they are kids, they have been ingrained.
Scientific proof.
Scientific proof that science is the only method of attaining
certainty, subhanAllah.
So this is indeed a misconception
that
needs to be...
It's a deeper epistemic problem.
Yeah.
It's a deeper epistemic problem. I like the way you answered it, although I think you left something out. Yes.
I think I agree with all that we say.
It's a very non-Italian thing to do.
Well, but at the same time, subhanAllah, you teach us, mashallah, jazakallah khair, that in the 70s or 100 years ago, science say that the sun don't have an orbit, and the Quran say that the sun have an orbit. So
according to some understandings of that verse.
Yes.
Yeah.
So even if the science says something about that contradicts the Quran, we still believe in the Quran, and we are open because we know that science changes.
Yes. See, the way you've answered that is very similar to the way that he answered it, which is good. But there's something missing, and it's related to the false dichotomy. The question that was asked was, can science ever disprove the Quran? We can paraphrase the question as saying, can science ever give you truth? Then show the difference between the public and the academic understanding. If we answer the question directly, we are accepting the war between Islam and science. So what's better to do is to take the question and say, what your question really means is, can science lead to certainty? And I say this in my discussions, in my when I'm speaking to even atheists. I say, even if I was a non-Muslim, I could have said this. The popular understanding is this, the academic understanding is this. Khalas. Because you want to show we hold this view about the philosophy of science, not because we're Muslims, but because this is a view that any person would hold about the philosophy of science, because this is the mainstream view. Never ever accept the false dichotomy. The false dichotomy, religion versus science. Don't accept that. Go back to what the question is actually saying. So, for example, the question, who made God, is really asking the question, who created the uncreated one? How do we know God is uncreated? Because of this. So, answering a question directly, like, have you stopped being your wife yet? That's a problem. You have to first break down what the question actually means and break the false dichotomy between religion and science, between Islam in particular and science.
So actually, it's developing the skill of fishing out the assumptions out of a statement.
Yes.
So if you're good at that, then you can take over and take the lead in the conversation. And,
Yes.
And break down his first principle, deconstruct
Sure.
to reconstruct.
And what you've covered here, by the way, I haven't actually covered much content, if you realize, in this lecture. I was actually saying the same thing again and again. What I was saying was, this is a popular understanding, this is an academic understanding, and I was giving you different examples. All you need to do is to take the wind out of someone's sort of argument, is simply show how they're not in line with mainstream academia. That's it. That is all you need to do. Even if you use one example. So for example, sometimes this actually happens when someone comes up and says, right, the Islam is wrong or the Quran is wrong because of this. Sometimes what you can simply do is simply ask them, and this actually works, simply ask them, what do you mean by that? So that's scientific theory. Have you actually read it? Most people, I'm telling you this from experience, and you probably know this if you've dealt with people who come from these sort of things, it's all hearsay. They don't understand any other science. It's all, they've heard something on YouTube, they got a little bit excited and decided to talk to you. That's all it is. And all you need to do is to show them how, and they hate this, I'm telling you. Of course, people who are sincere, this will open up their heart, but people who are like militant in there, and we're du'at, we're involved with sometimes meeting those people who are very militant in their beliefs, all you simply need to do is show how their popular understanding is disconnected to the academic understanding. Now you're not pitting religion versus science, Islam versus science, you're pitting popular understanding, misrepresentation, propaganda versus mainstream academia. And that just makes them look really silly, because it looks like it's them versus all of science. So for example, and I'm going to be covering this in my next session.
There's more questions.
Yes, I'm going to be covering this in my next session. Sometimes people ask me, how is it possible that 99% of biologists believe in Darwinian evolution, right? You have to accept it. I simply go down the route of what does belief in evolution mean? According to all evolutionary biologists and philosophers of science, it's based on a probabilistic framework which has assumptions, which has disputes. I accept that. But your notion of belief is it's true as the things you feel, which is not right. You'll always find that there's hidden assumptions there. And those are the assumptions that you actually have to uncover. Yes, Nadeem.
Three more. Can we say that the science in the Quran is tomorrow's science?
Okay. This is a very good question, and all of you guys here know enough to break down that question. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. I'm going to pick on you. No. He did a heavy gym session today, that's why he's out of it. Because you know, Icelandic people, they do press-ups in their sleep, I heard.
That's my point, right? I mean, what I would say, I would just step back what we said in the course, and I would say that science doesn't lead to certainty, and science change, actually. It always changes, so we have no way to say that tomorrow will be the same.
Yes.
So we have no way to say that tomorrow it will be like the Quran or different, right?
Excellent. Everyone understand what he said?
Yeah, so the Quran doesn't change, so anyway,
Yeah.
there will be different.
So, there's no guarantee that what's in the Quran is tomorrow's science.
Yeah.
But there's also something else we can add. Why do you feel, as Sufyan said, why do you feel you have to validate the Quran using science? Why? That's the hidden inferiority complex. You know, I was looking at this, it's really disgusting, but I'm not sure if it lies, so I can say this. Well, I'll say this anyway. Who cares? Bani Israel are the previous nation who we're going to follow inch by inch, step by step, even if they go into the lizard hole. What they did in the past is what we're doing. So they came across, for example, the Christians and the Jewish people, they came across Greek proto-science, and they started to understand their scripture through that scientific lens. So they had, for example, when Galileo came up and Kepler, and they were challenging certain views of astronomy, the Christians had used the Greek proto-science, and they'd merged that with Christian theology, and they claimed the universe looked in a certain way, right? And they started believing in this, and then they got attacked. And so the same sort of science in the Quran they did before. Also, they had such an inferiority complex, the ancient people, the ancient Muslims, if you like, the Jews and the Christians, the ancient Muslims, that the superpower at the time of some 2,000 or 3,000 years ago was who? The Greeks. They were seen as the masters of logic, the masters of rhetoric, the masters of literature. And what did the Muslims at the time, the Bani Israel, what did the Muslims at the time do? They copied them in everything. To the point, and when I discovered this, I was disgusted, right? The Greeks used to have these baths, right? And they used to go out naked after having a bath, and you used to have the man in his pride standing there, right? And they were uncircumcised. So the Jews, who were the Muslims at the time, they uncircumcised themselves to look like the Greeks because they had an inferiority complex about them. They tugged on their foreskins until they basically had uncircumcised themselves. And there's even a scientific term for this which I forgot. That's the level of inferiority complex they had when it came to Greek science, Greek proto-science, because they were seen as the global cultural superpower, which at the moment is the West. So the Muslims, what are they doing? I'm talking about the sort of liberal sort of ones, if you even use the word liberal, the confused ones. That's what they're doing. They have such an inferiority complex that they're willing to, the Quran has the Higgs boson, the Quran has this, the Quran has the iPhone, Quran has this, Quran has that, Quran has black holes, Quran, so if you say Quran has the Big Bang, which some Muslims say, the Big Bang's in the Quran, what's going to happen, say, like for example, the physicist Sean Carroll, he's putting forth a model of an eternal universe again. And he's trying to promote that amongst physicists. What if his model becomes famous again? Then all the people who believe the Quran is true because of the Big Bang, they are going to say, the Quran's wrong now because the Quran doesn't have, the Big Bang is not true. The fact of the matter is, and this, you should try this out. If we're just to go by so-called miracles, okay, so, Osama, I come to you with a new religion. This new religion has a book, and the book has scientific miracles, somehow. It has historical miracles about the future. It has predictions which have come true. If you open it up on a random page, it can tell you your mother's maiden name. Everything. Amazing miracles. But this book says God has an elephant head and sits on a throne and throws lightning down, and there's 2 demigods with him. Would you believe in this religious book?
No.
Why?
Because it contradicts my personal...
It contradicts Tawheed. It contradicts what you know to be true even before scripture, even before reasoning, which is La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah doesn't need evidence. Muhammad Rasulullah does. Yeah? La ilaha illallah doesn't. Because if we're just to go by miracles, you would accept this book. Well, guess what? Dajjal's going to come with miracles. He's going to command the sky to rain, it rains. He's going to command the earth to grow, it grows. If we are people of miracles who follow science and follow whatever miracles, we should all follow Dajjal. May Allah protect us, yeah? We don't go by miracles. Miracles, you'd be surprised. I actually know a brother who nearly left Islam. He's from a Christian background. He nearly left Islam to become a Christian because he saw Christians do miracles. He actually had evidence of them doing supernatural things. Only because he was new in Islam, only when he discovered the jinn and the fact that jinns can do these things, did he come back to Islam properly again. We don't go by miracles, these abstract proofs. We go by what the Sahaba went by. The Sahaba knew this was the truth because it taught them what they already knew to be true, which was La ilaha illallah. That's the foundation. And Allah is my witness, we got a phone call here in the office, a brother who accepted Islam. He was from a Nordic type of, ancient UK pagan religion where they have many gods, right? He's from one of these religions. And he said, and this is not a conversation I heard from him. I spoke to the guy, and Allah is my witness, I had this conversation. He said to me, and he rang the office because he wanted to leave Islam after accepting Islam. So I asked him what the problem was. He said, I used to be a pagan, follower of this pagan religion, and in our pagan religions we had many statues and gods, and we had the supreme creator. One day I asked the supreme creator to guide me to the truth. All love for idols left my heart, and I went on a journey and I discovered Islam. When I prayed to the supreme creator and I rejected the idols in my religion. And he says, now I am Muslim, and I am living amongst Muslims. When I went to the mosque, they had a picture of a sheikh and they were asking me to pray to God through the sheikh. He said, if this is Islam, I want to leave Islam. Wallahi, he said this to me. He said, they are teaching me to worship other than God, and the only reason I believe Islam to be true is because it teaches me God is worthy of worship. Who's right? I said to him, you are right and they are wrong. And when I explained to him how his belief in Tawheed was not based upon him reading the book of Tawheed, right? It was based upon his fitrah, and that's why he accepted Islam. And he wanted to leave Islam when he thought Islam was not a religion of Tawheed. So when I explained to him, you are right, he is wrong, he said, I'm not going to leave Islam. This is the truth. The proof of Islam is Tawheed, and the proof of the existence of God is the connection you have with God when you worship Him. This is Islam. It's not based upon, the expansion of the universe. We created everything from water. Yeah? Islam, if a building is built upon strong foundations, you can carry on building, you can carry on building, you can carry on building. But if the building has cracks, you will always be wary about building new floors. If the foundations of belief, if the pillars of Iman are weak, you're not going to take action as a Muslim. And that's why we need to, even when we teach this stuff, this reinforces for the Muslims what they themselves don't know. I heard a really powerful statement, and I want to sort of end on this before taking other questions. I heard this from a very prominent scholar, a very prominent student of Shaykh Albani, direct student of Shaykh Albani. He said, ignorance is the bid'ah of this ummah. Whenever we talk about bid'ah, we talk about, okay, he did this thing, so it's not allowed. He said, ignorance, being ignorant in your religion, this is a bid'ah. And this is the reason why we're facing the issues that we're facing. When we went to, for example, Medina, myself and Hamza, and Hamza gave the philosophy of science to the Medina graduates that were there was no problem. They already knew this stuff. Why? Because they knew the foundations of the religion. They knew that, we had fatwas from back in the 1980s and 90s, which was condemning the science miracle stuff. The scientific miracles in the Quran, we didn't give up because it was wrong. In the 1980s and 90s, scholars were speaking out against it. But no one wanted to listen because we wanted to follow famous people. And this is why we're facing the issues that we're facing today, because we are ignorant of even the foundations of our own religion.
I only want to make a statement, subhanAllah. Nowadays, Iman is built upon science.
Sorry?
Iman is built upon science, subhanAllah. Iman is based upon science nowadays. If you understand where I'm going.
Yes. Although what I would say is that it's an excuse. So people already believe Islam is true, and as a confirmation bias they use science. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because I have met people who, when you ask them why they're Muslim, they'll come up with scientific miracles. When you show them that that's wrong, they'll still believe, because they were just trying to explain why they believe something in their heart is true, and they've decided to use that. But in reality, that's not why they really have Iman. The Iman is because of Tawheed, or they read the life of the Prophet ﷺ, or the prophecies, or all these types of things.
Actually,
let me take this one first, then I'll take your question, Nadeem.
Last question
is actually
his question first, then we'll do yours.
It's not a question by the same. Actually, what they try to do is the same thing of Ibrahim alayhi salam. يَتَمَئِنَّ قَلْبِي. So he says that. So they try to grab to these kind of things, but they don't know the risk actually of grabbing to these kind of things. And we just have to let them know that these things, like science, for example, is something that is can change, so it's actually dangerous to just change, as Ibrahim alayhi salam grabbed to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him from him straight.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind is this. I gave this example to a confused Muslim who came up to me after a talk and said to me, you know, how do you achieve certainty? Because it was night time, I asked him to look at the stars. I said to him, if these stars in front of you realign to La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah in the sky, no one saw it but you, and it's clear, will you ever doubt Islam after that point? He said no. I said, what if you come across somebody saying to you Islam is wrong because of this or that, or hadith is wrong, or would you ever doubt after that point? He said no. I said, so all you need is one clear evidence, and Allah says in the Quran, we will show them the signs in the horizons and within themselves until they know that this is the truth. Allah will give you signs in your life which are the equivalent of the moon splitting for you. It may not mean anything to anybody else, but for you, you know that this is the truth. And once you see that, then there's no more excuse for doubt, because you've seen that absolute proof. La ilaha illallah doesn't need that proof, but Muhammad Rasulullah does. Right? And anybody that's searching, and this is my advice when I speak to some non-Muslims. I was speaking to a non-Muslim recently. He wanted to have loads and loads of debates about God, and he said, what about this, what about that? I just stopped the conversation. I said, if you want guidance, ask for it, you will get it. It's not possible somebody asks for guidance and doesn't get it. That's not possible. That's not who Allah is. You want guidance, you get it. Anybody that's sincere, anybody that's looking, they will get guided. Why? Because Allah makes it clear. Whoever wants guidance, He gives them. Whoever doesn't want guidance, He doesn't force them. He turns them away. In fact, I heard this from a student of knowledge, and he was using a tafsir of the Quran. He said, when people turn, then Allah makes them turn. So when you turn away, then Allah misguides you. It's not got to do with Allah just randomly, okay, you go, misguidance. It doesn't work like that. You're the one who makes the choice. You could be the son of an idol worshipper in a country of idol worship where everybody's a disbeliever and still be a Muslim like Ibrahim alayhi salam. Or you could be born in Medina, or you could be the son of a prophet like Nuh alayhi salam's son and be a disbeliever even though you see the beginning of the flood. Remember, he disbelieved when he saw the beginning of the flood. And what does he do? He says, I believe in philosophical naturalism. Did he really say that in the Quran? Yes, he did, because he said, the mountain will protect me. Physical causation. Right? The reality is, anybody who understands the foundations of Iman, they will not fall into this nonsense. It's because we do not know our own religion. So even this is a great way of teaching people even what the foundations of their own religion is.
Alright, someone's asking, so is it best not to mention science while engaging in doubt?
No, I would use science. I would use the scientific miracle. I would use one scientific miracle, which is all of science today. Every single scientific technology that we have today, every single conclusion, every single theory goes back to Hassan ibn Haytham, who was a Quranic scholar who was inspired by the Quran. That's a scientific miracle for you. You want a greater miracle than that? That's a sociological miracle. No Quran, no Hassan ibn Haytham, no scientific revolution, no Renaissance, no modern Western scientific world. In fact, we have non-Muslim Western historians saying this. If it wasn't for the Muslims, we wouldn't have Western civilization as we have it today.
You have a name?
It's all going to be in our book, Failed Hypothesis, inshallah. I don't remember the names at the top of my head. That's a scientific miracle you can use. And that's something that is not going to be challenged by induction, because that's a testimonial fact from history. That's one scientific miracle which is irrefutable. And that's a sociological miracle. How long do we have before the break?
We've got 4 minutes, so I'll do one quick question.
4 minutes and then they have a break?
Break for 20 minutes.
Fine. 4 minutes, okay.
Do one quick question, unless the brother's got a question there.
Let's focus on the class first, then we'll do Facebook. Yes.
So you were talking about popular understanding of science.
Yes.
And versus an academic understanding of science. And you need to dissect. You need to tell them that their understanding is not based upon academic understanding of science. Could you state that their understanding is not scientific academically?
I wouldn't put it that way. I would say your philosophical understanding of science is wrong.
So that was my next question. Or could you say their philosophical understanding of science?
Yeah.
Is not
So their actual understanding of what science is, because they may know the science really well. They may know, for example, the details of quantum theory really, really well. But we're not talking about the details of quantum theory, which is why when you go through this philosophy of science, and this is, if you know anything about the philosophy of science, we've just scratched the surface, right? But this is enough to dismantle that sort of nonsense narrative. This is more than enough. All you simply need to do is any scientific theory which somebody brings up and tries to claim is true, you use this approach, you don't need to know any of the science. It's good if you know the science, but it's not necessary, because you could just go down this route. It's like a Christian coming up to you and saying, Jesus is God because John 3:16, because of this, because of Revelation. Or you can say, I've never read the Bible, but it was put together over 300 years, you have different versions, it's not reliable, khalas. They can know all of the references. And normally in debates, you get a Muslim and a Christian, they're doing ping pong. One gives them a verse, one gives them a verse. They're going, yeah, you know, the Muslim knows more of, he's done hifz of the Bible, he's read it more than the Quran. It's true.
No.
And even scientific miracle promoters, and I used to be one of them many, many years ago, before, when I was ignorant of this stuff, I used to believe. I didn't believe in Islam because of it. I believe in Islam because I believe in Islam. I believe that there's none worthy of worship except Allah. That made sense. And reading up the life of the Prophet ﷺ gave me certainty this is a true prophet. I don't know how to articulate this to people, so I just started using science in the Quran. When I realized it's wrong, it didn't affect my iman. I just thought, okay, wrong. You move on.
So I'd like to make a distinction. Indeed, the iman is not based upon science.
Yes.
It's based upon fitrah, let's say fitrah.
Yes, of course.
But can we say, because iman and yaqeen are two different things, can we say a lot of people that yaqeen is based upon science? That's certainty.
But the thing is, here's the thing. I'm not going to answer your question. I'm just going to ask a question. How can your certainty be based on something which is uncertain?
Exactly. Very good question.
If that's the case, and remember always, miracles, 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 we should follow Dajjal then.
Yeah.
His miracles are going to be, he's going to bring back the dead with Allah's permission. If we're just going to go by proof, miracles, Dajjal.
Now the question, how can you...
How can you say, I will achieve certainty using something which is uncertain?